In a small village called Mbale, lived a bright young girl named Achieng. She loved learning. Every morning she would watch other children in their neat uniforms walk to school, their books clutched close to their chests. Achieng dreamed of being one of them. She had once gone to school too. She loved numbers, stories, and the feel of a pencil in her hand. Her father had always encouraged her. "My daughter will be a teacher one day," he used to say with pride. But everything changed when her father died suddenly. Achieng was just 9. Her world broke into pieces. Her stepmother, Nafula, who had always been cold, now became cruel. One day, Nafula gathered all of Achieng's books and tore them up in front of her. The pages flew around the yard like fallen dreams. "You're not my real child," she said. "School is only for my children." Achieng stood frozen, tears pouring down her cheeks. From that day on, her life became a blur of scrubbing floors, washing clothes, and cooking food she rarely got to eat. She wasn't allowed outside, not even to play. The sound of the school bell ringing in the distance felt like a painful reminder of what she had lost. At night, she would lie awake wondering why life had changed so quickly. Her dream of going to school, of becoming someone, felt like it had been ripped away. But deep inside, Achieng held on. She still believed somehow her story wasn't over. Every morning, Achieng stood behind the old, dusty window, her small fingers wrapped around the rusted metal bars. From there, she watched her step-siblings walk off to school, laughing and chatting, their uniforms clean and their backpacks bouncing on their backs. She used to be like them once. She remembered how it felt to wear her uniform, to open her books, to sit in class and raise her hand. Now, all she had was the view from that window and fading memories of the lessons she once loved. As soon as they were gone, her stepmother would shout her name, and the chores would begin. Scrubbing the floors, fetching water from the well, washing dishes until her hands were raw. This had become her new life. The weight of each task was heavy, not just on her small body but on her heart. She wasn't just tired from work. She was tired from dreaming and being told those dreams didn't belong to her. But Achieng didn't give up easily. When no one was watching, she would whisper multiplication tables to herself, or try to write the alphabet on the dusty floor with her finger. She clung to those small pieces of knowledge like treasure. They were her secret, a way to hold on to who she truly was inside. Sometimes when she was all alone, she'd close her eyes and imagine being back in a classroom, sitting by the window, sunlight on her face, a pencil in her hand. She'd imagine a teacher calling her name, smiling as she gave the right answer. It made her feel alive, even if only for a moment. But reality would return quickly. The shouts, the slaps, the long days. No one cared that she wanted to learn. No one listened when she said she missed school. To them, she was just the girl who cleaned. A burden. A shadow. Yet even locked away from the classroom, Achieng's mind kept learning in silence. Her heart kept hoping. She didn't know how or when, but she still believed something would change. One day, somehow, she would return to learning, and no one would stop her again. One afternoon, while running errands at the market for her stepmother, Achieng met a boy named Baraka. He was about her age, selling mangoes and bananas from a wooden cart. He had kind eyes and a warm smile. When he noticed her staring at a stack of old books beside him, he asked gently, "You like to read?" Achieng nodded shyly. It had been so long since anyone had asked her something that simple, or cared about her answer. They started talking. Bit by bit, Achieng told Baraka about how she used to go to school, how she missed it, and how she still tried to remember her lessons in secret. Baraka listened closely. He didn't laugh. He didn't pity her. Instead, the next time she passed by, he handed her a small tattered science book. "You can borrow it," he whispered. "I have more." That moment changed everything. At night, after her chores were done and the house had gone quiet, Achieng would light a small candle stub she had hidden in an old cup. With the flame flickering, she'd open the book and begin to read. Her eyes danced across the pages, hungry for every word. She wrote notes on scraps of paper she found around the house, bits of newspapers, empty sugar bags, anything she could use. She hid them carefully under a loose floorboard in her tiny room. That secret spot became her library, her classroom, her world. Every few days, she would sneak to the market again, pretending to buy fruit. Baraka would slip her another book, a grammar book, a math workbook, even a torn dictionary. He became her friend, her tutor, her quiet hero. She didn't need desks or a blackboard. All she needed was the fire inside her, and someone who believed she could still learn. Sometimes she'd fall asleep with her head on an open book, the candle burned out, her heart full. Those moments felt magical, like a secret she shared only with the stars. No one else knew, but Achieng was going to school again. Not in the way the world expected, but in the only way she could. On her 15th birthday, Achieng made a brave decision. She finally gathered the courage to ask her stepmother one more time, "Please, can I go back to school?" But instead of listening, Nafula screamed, grabbed a stick, and beat her until she collapsed in tears. That night, as she lay on the cold floor with bruises on her back and pain in her heart, something inside her snapped. She knew if she stayed, her dreams would die forever. Before the sun rose, Achieng quietly packed the few things she had. A torn dress, a paper full of hidden notes, and one small book from Baraka. She didn't even have shoes. With nothing but her will, she walked away from the only home she had ever known. She didn't know where she was going, but she kept walking. Mile after mile. Her feet blistered. Her stomach growled. But her dream was stronger than her hunger. After 2 days she reached Jinja, a busy town far from her village. Everything was strange, the noise, the traffic, the crowds. She was scared, alone, and had nowhere to go. But she remembered hearing about a church that helped street children. She walked to it and begged at the gate. A kind woman came out and gave her food. When Achieng asked if she could stay, the woman said, "You can help us clean, and we'll give you a place to sleep." It wasn't much, just a small corner near the toilets, but Achieng was safe. She cleaned floors, scrubbed toilets, and helped in the kitchen. She worked hard and never complained. But what she really wanted was to learn. One day she saw a poster for adult literacy classes at the church. Her heart raced. She ran to the teacher and begged, "Please let me join. I'll clean more, I'll do anything, I just want to study." The teacher looked at her tired face and saw something powerful in her eyes. "Come tomorrow," he said gently. That night Achieng cried, but for the first time in years they were tears of hope. She had escaped a prison, found a small place to stand, and taken her first step back toward the classroom. Achieng never stopped studying. Every evening after cleaning at the church, she would sit in the corner of the hall with her borrowed books. There was no desk, no chair, just the cold floor and a small lamp. But she didn't care. She read late into the night, asking questions, practicing math problems, writing and rewriting notes. Some nights she was so tired she could barely keep her eyes open. But her dream pushed her forward. She was hungry, not just for food but for knowledge. Her teachers began to notice. "This girl learns faster than anyone I've seen," one of them said. She soaked up everything like a sponge. While other students needed time, Achieng needed only a lesson once. She remembered it all word for word. She had a gift, and now she finally had the chance to use it. When the day for the national exams came, Achieng was nervous but ready. She sat in that big exam room in her simple second-hand dress, surrounded by students from better schools. Some had private tutors. Some came in cars. But Achieng came with something stronger, determination. She poured her whole heart into every answer. Weeks later, when the results came out, everyone was shocked. Achieng had scored the highest in the entire district, and one of the best scores in the whole country. A girl from the slums. A girl who cleaned toilets. A girl no one believed in, had just made history. A local radio station picked up her story. They invited her for an interview. Her voice trembled as she spoke, but her words were powerful. "I just wanted to learn. I never gave up." The next day, people couldn't stop talking about her. Strangers sent letters. Sponsors called the church offering help. Scholarships flooded in, from Uganda and even from abroad. For the first time in her life, Achieng didn't have to beg to study. Doors were opening. People were listening. She was no longer just a girl with a dream. She was a girl with proof that dreams can come true. When Achieng stepped onto the airplane for the first time, she couldn't believe it. Just a few years ago, she was cleaning toilets for food. Now she was flying to Cape Town, South Africa, to start university. As the plane took off, she looked out the window with tears in her eyes. This wasn't just a trip, it was a dream taking flight. Cape Town was big and beautiful, with tall buildings, fast cars, and people from all over the world. The university campus looked like something from a movie. Green gardens, huge libraries, and lecture halls full of confident students. Most of them came from rich families. They had laptops, expensive clothes, and spoke with polished English. Achieng arrived with only a second-hand suitcase, a few books, and a heart full of fire. First, she felt out of place. She didn't know which fork to use at lunch. She didn't understand some of the big words in class. But she reminded herself why she was there. Not to fit in, but to rise. She studied harder than anyone. She spent hours in the library. She asked questions, took notes, and stayed up late reading. Her focus was unshakable. She chose to study education, policy, and entrepreneurship because she had a promise to keep. A promise to build schools for girls like her. Girls who were forgotten. Girls who were told they didn't matter. Outside of class, she joined student groups, attended seminars, and even spoke at youth events. She shared her story when invited, and every time she did, people listened in silence, some with tears in their eyes. Achieng didn't just want a degree. She wanted tools, ideas, skills. She wanted to understand how systems worked, how schools were built, how policies were written, and how she could change all of it. She remembered every girl she saw behind a window back home, every book she couldn't read, every dream someone tried to kill. And every time it got hard at university, every time she felt small or alone, she thought of them. That gave her strength. At 25, Achieng returned to her village, not with anger, not to prove a point, but with a dream in her hands and love in her heart. The same road she once walked barefoot now felt different under her feet. People stared in shock. The girl they once ignored, the one who scrubbed floors and begged for books, was back, wearing confidence like a crown. But she didn't come to boast. She came to build. She remembered how it felt to be locked inside, watching other kids go to school. She remembered the pain of being told, "Education is not for you." And that's exactly why she came back, to make sure no child ever heard those words again. With the little money she had saved and the help of a few kind friends, Achieng started her first school, right under a big tree near her old home. There were no desks, no blackboards, not even proper books. But there were children. Dozens of them, sitting on the ground with eyes full of hope. And that was enough. She named it Achieng Academy. It was more than a school, it was a promise. Every day she taught reading, writing, and math. But she also taught courage, kindness, and dreams. Parents began to notice. More children came. Volunteers joined. Some donated books. Others helped build wooden benches. Little by little, things grew. In just 3 years, Achieng Academy was no longer just a tree school. It had grown into 12 schools across 4 districts. Some had proper classrooms, others were still simple, but in every one of them a child was learning. A girl was reading. A boy was dreaming. A future was being born. People from far and wide came to see what she had built. Some were amazed. Some cried. "You did all this?" they asked. She smiled and said, "I'm just getting started." Achieng didn't want fame. She didn't want revenge. She wanted change. And she was doing it, one classroom, one book, one child at a time. She had once studied in the dark, alone and afraid. Now she lit the way for thousands. Her dream had come full circle. One hot afternoon, as Achieng was walking through one of her school compounds, a familiar figure stood at the gate. At first, she didn't believe her eyes. It was Nafula, her stepmother. The woman who once tore up her books, who locked her inside and beat her for wanting to learn. But this was not the same proud and cruel woman Achieng remembered. This Nafula looked tired, her clothes worn out, her face lined with years of struggle. She held the hand of a small girl beside her, her youngest daughter. For a long moment they just stared at each other. Nafula lowered her eyes, unable to speak. Achieng waited. Finally, in a shaky voice, Nafula said, "I heard about your schools. I came to ask, please, can my daughter join?" There was silence. Even the wind seemed to pause. Achieng looked at the little girl, barefoot, scared, clinging to her mother's skirt. She saw herself in that child. A small girl with big dreams, standing at the edge of a world that once refused her. Then Achieng did something no one expected. She smiled gently and said, "All children deserve an education. Even yours." Nafula burst into tears. She dropped to her knees and cried like a child. "I'm sorry," she whispered again and again. "I didn't know. I didn't understand." Achieng helped her up and said softly, "It's not about the past. It's about the future. Let her learn." The teachers and students nearby watched the scene, moved to silence. No one said a word. Everyone could feel that something powerful had just happened, something beyond forgiveness. It was healing. It was grace. That day, Nafula's daughter joined Achieng Academy. She received a uniform, books, and a seat in the front row. Achieng made sure of it. And every time she saw her studying, she smiled. Not with pride, but with peace. She could have turned her stepmother away. She could have reminded her of every cruel word, every beating, but Achieng had grown past revenge. She had turned pain into purpose. Her heart, once become, had become a bridge. A few years ago, Achieng was the girl nobody wanted. She was rejected, forgotten, and pushed aside. But now her name was being called on a national stage, not as a servant or a burden, but as a hero. Dressed in a beautiful African dress, she walked up to the podium with tears in her eyes and pride in her heart. The president himself placed a medal around her neck. She had just been awarded one of the country's highest honors for her incredible work in education. Achieng couldn't believe it. This moment felt like a dream. Cameras flashed. People clapped. The little girl who once hid books under floorboards was now being honored for building schools and changing lives. She had gone from being locked out of the classroom to unlocking doors for thousands of children across Uganda. Not long after, Achieng was invited to give a TED Talk. First she was nervous. What would she say? Would anyone care? But when she stood on that red circle, looking out at the audience, everything became clear. She spoke from her heart. Her talk was called Educated to Rise. She told her story, the pain, the beatings, the secret night lessons, and the school under a tree. She spoke about girls who are still being told they don't matter, and why we must fight for their right to learn. Her voice was strong but full of emotion. Many in the audience cried. Some stood to clap before she even finished. Within days, the video went viral. Millions of people watched it across the world. Messages poured in from teachers, students, mothers, leaders. Some said her story gave them hope. Others said it gave them courage to fight for their own education. Achieng didn't give the talk for fame. She gave it for every girl who feels invisible. For every child sweeping floors instead of reading books. She wanted them to know. You are not forgotten. You are powerful. And you can rise. From rejection to recognition, Achieng's journey became a symbol. Not just in Uganda, but across Africa and beyond. Today, Achieng stands as one of the most inspiring women in Africa. She now owns over 100 schools across the country. Schools filled with laughter, learning, and young girls who dare to dream. From villages to towns, her schools have become safe places where children, especially girls, are not just taught math and reading, but also confidence, courage, and hope. Tens of thousands of students have passed through Achieng Academy. Many of them come from poor homes just like she did. Some walk miles each day barefoot and hungry, but they come because they believe, like Achieng once did, that education can change everything. When people ask her why she keeps telling her story, she always smiles and says, "It's not to shame the past. It's to light a fire in someone else." She doesn't speak with anger. She speaks with purpose. Her story is no longer just about pain. It's about power. She often visits her schools, sitting with the students under trees or in classrooms, sharing her journey. I was once like you, she tells them. I had nothing, but I had a dream. And that was enough to start. Her favorite quote is written on the wall of every school she builds. They buried me, not knowing I was a seed. Because they tried to silence her. They tried to break her. But instead they planted something deep inside her. Something strong, something unstoppable. Achieng's journey has come full circle. From a little girl locked away in a kitchen to a woman unlocking doors for thousands, she has proven that no one is too poor, too broken, or too forgotten to rise. And the best part? She's just getting started.